Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is from the corner of your eye in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 51, Search for Tsunade, Cavalry. Sasuke scrambles back, nearly tripping over his heels as he tries to get as far away from this ninja as he can. There's no way for him to get around him, he doesn't think. If he's allied with Itachi, then he's probably strong, too strong to avoid, and with that explosion in the sky there's no way that Jiraiya and Tsunade don't know they should come running. No way. So he just has to stall as long as he can. Deidara pulls something out of his sleeve, a small white bird, and throws it at him, and instinctively, Sasuke brings up his sword to swipe at it. He hits and the explosion sends him to the ground. His ears ring, vision flickers. Sasuke pushes himself gingerly to his knees, and when he touches his right cheek, it comes away stained with blood. His opponent is laughing and speaking, and it takes a second for Sasuke's left ear to crack through the ringing, the static, to be able to understand him. Your little brother. Deidara is laughing, and he grins. It'd be a sight, if I took him out and you couldn't. There's not a response to that, and Sasuke braves a glance over to see Itachi completely ignoring Deidara in favor of fighting Yamato-sensei and some of Naruto's clones. The utter lack of caring Itachi shows shouldn't hurt him, it shouldn't, but he still grits his teeth and pushes himself fully to his feet. Deidara's grin is gone, and so it seems Sasuke's not the only one affected by Itachi's quiet. Your brother pisses me off, you know. Deidara says, shaking his head. He's an asshole. God. Sasuke jerks his head, trying to shake hearing back into his right side, but he can't, and it leaves him a little imbalanced. He is. Deidara looks at him with pity. Was he always like this? Sasuke slips his hand into his pocket, very resolutely, doesn't think about the memories, and nods. Stall. Stall, stall, stall. That fucking sucks. I just want to stab his eyes out, you know? Or blow his whole stupid face up, he'd look better. He's such a dash. Go. Sasuke yanks his hand out of his pocket, pulling out his shuriken and throwing two with one hand. It's all he needs as the two of them dig into Deidara's shoulders and he cries out. If Deidara does explosives, that means there's plenty of material on him for it. And that means if Sasuke combines with fire. He grins, dropping his sword so he can run through the hand seal's rapid fire, and he blows, sending fire along the wires connected to the shuriken, sends them right towards Deidara, whose eyes widen in alarm, and the explosion throws him into a tree. It's big, as big as the one from the sky, the heat searing Sasuke's arms and face and burning them, and his back hurts, aches, and he thinks some of his hair is singed, and he's not sure if the explosion reached the others, but if he hurts this much at this distance, then Deidara is. He opens his eyes and Deidara is standing right in front of him. The older teen cackles and kicks Sasuke across the face, and it's a flare of pain and he's thrown to the side. He reaches out frantically for his sword, but he had dropped it, hadn't he? Deidara steps on his back and Sasuke tries to hold in a groan. How? He croaks instead. It was a clone, little Uchiha. Deidara sings songs, and Sasuke wishes he could see something right now. He doesn't think anyone's dead because surely Naruto would have freaked out, and he can hear Naruto's yells, still, can hear the clashing, but Yamato-sensei and Itachi are so quiet in comparison they could have left for all he knew. Deidara grinds him down into the dirt a little more, and Sasuke hates this feeling of hopelessness even as his mind races. How can he throw him off? How can he get out? I think your brother wanted to kill you, Deidara says conversationally, and Sasuke's blood runs cold. I'm looking forward to the look on his face when he sees your body, yeah? No, not like this, not in a way that's so pointless, not when he hasn't managed to accomplish anything, not while Itachi is still out there, not. Get away from him. Naruto roars, and the pressure is off Sasuke's back. He jerks to feet. Naruto stands in front of him, or maybe a clone, bubbling with red chakra as he glares with a ferocity that Sasuke's never seen. Deidara's a few steps back, wide-eyed, clutching his cheek. But the older blonde recovers quickly and he grins. The Kyuubi. You're the one we're looking for. This is perfect, really. Sasuke sneaks a glance at the others. Yamato-sensei still holds Itachi at bay, but Sasuke thinks it's only because he knows the other, knows his moves. Kisame and Shizun and countless clones still fight, and the Shark Man roars with laughter and enjoyment, even though Shizun seems like she's starting to falter. He can't help them, though, there's too much to deal with here. Shut up, Naruto growls, and there's a more guttural quality than normal, a tint to his voice that's not normally there. The Kyuubi? Pervy Sage and the old lady'll get here soon. They'll kick your ass. Absolute bewilderment crosses Deidara's face for just 1 second. Pervy Sage? He mouths to himself, before it finally clicks with him. Oh. Don't worry about the Sunin, yeah. He grins again, and Sasuke is really starting to hate that grin. We've got someone taking care of them. Sasuke swallows sharply, forcing himself to step up next to Naruto and scoop up his sword from the ground. There's no backup. There's none coming. It's just the 4 of them against these insanely powerful shinobi. Yamato-sensei is barely staying on top, Shizun will fall soon, and even with Naruto's demon within them, Sasuke highly doubts the 2 of them can take down Deidara. Even if they do somehow manage it, they'll still have the other 2 to contend with, and that's not going to work. They're going to die here. There's no way on earth they can win this. Sasuke glances at Naruto, and he doesn't know if the other has come to the same realization or not, but he can't figure out what words he wants to say. There's more he would have told Sakura. Kakashi-sensei. Karin. Ino, Hinata, Choji. Too many moments left, and Anko's sacrifice was nothing but a waste, because maybe if she hadn't come after him, they'd both be alive instead of this. Naruto he says, but he can't get anything else out before his throat closes up. Buttering, Deidara says, rolling his eyes, and he holds out his hands, and oh my god, does he have mouths on his hands? What the hell, Sasuke blurts, unable to help it. Deidara laughs. You like them? I've got one more, but everything happens at once. That's how it always is, isn't it? Kisame crows with excitement, and the 3 of them turn, and Shizun has fallen. For a terrifying moment, Sasuke thinks the Shark Man has cut her down, but she's just crumpled down to 1 knee, panting and exhausted, and the last of the Naruto clones poof themselves out on Kisame's sword. Yamato-sensei jerks his head towards the site, too, eyes widening in alarm, and he jerks his hand, and wood and vines shoot out of the earth, entangling Kisame. What the ? He swings angrily, struggling against the wood, and behind him, a slightly larger vine with a bud on the end rises. It opens, and it's Kurane-sensei. She throws her kunao at Kisame's head, but he yanks it to the left at the last minute, grinning and managing to break through 1 block. Log of the wood, and swings his sword around at her. It misses, passing straight through the vines like the illusions they are, and Kurane-sensei disappears into the ground, melting into it like Sasuke once saw Orochimaru do. Shizun has her head turned slightly to the side. Sasuke can see, through the red haze, the Sharingan throws over everything, chakra. There's a chakra mass right next to her, right next to Shizun, and it's not Kurane-sensei because Sasuke can see where her mass is underground. So there's someone else there, a second person next to Shizun that only he and Itachi can detect, and his tension fades a little. I hate genjutsu users, Deidara spits, and Sasuke lets his attention get drawn back to him. He hasn't moved, and it's so clear that he's not taking this seriously at all. Sasuke never thought he'd be relieved at something like that, but he is right now. It's cheating. Shut up, Naruto growls, clapping his hands together, and he and Sasuke are surrounded by clones that yell and charge at him. The problem with that, though, is it's easy enough for Deidara to wipe them all out quickly with just a few small explosions as he does his best to dodge. The good part of that, though, is that it gives the 3rd chakra source enough time to communicate. Hold position, fingers tap into Sasuke's back. The chakra source moves to Naruto, presumably doing the same, and Sasuke wishes he were better at this, that he could see more than just the fact there was chakra, but he's not that good with his Sharingan yet. He and Naruto exchange looks and nod. Stay. When all the clones are popped and their smoke has drifted away, Deidara shakes his head at them. You're really not making this too much fun, yeah? Think it's time to make some real art. He pulls what Sasuke has figured out must be clay out of his sleeve, feeding it to his left hand, and Sasuke can't help but pull a face. Naruto trembles next to him with suppressed rage, maybe? and Sasuke wonders how difficult it is for him to keep this steady flow of Kyuubi chakra. Already, the bubbling red around him has faded, but his eyes remain red and the scars on his cheek are thick. Now, Deidara says, and the tongue of his hand starts to spit something out onto his other palm. There's a flash of light behind the older teen and he cries out, muscles seizing up and dropping the clay bird and hair blooming with static as he crumples forward onto the ground. Sakura stands behind him, hand flashing with a quickly fading lightning. Naruto and Sasuke gape. Sakura! Naruto yells, finding his voice first. What are you doing here? She quirks a small smile. Saving you, I guess. Wait, so who was the other? Sasuke glances over and it's Karin next to Shizune. The woman stands, pulling herself to her feet, while Karin rubs at a spot on her arm and looks up to meet his gaze and oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay. That's 1 down, 2 to go, right? And 7 against 2 is good odds, even if the opponents are powerful. Sakura steps over Deidara to walk in their direction and he grabs her ankle. She shrieks and her teammates move, Sasuke grabbing her hands and pulling while Naruto punches Deidara in the face. The older blonde reels back, slamming both his hands together and so does Naruto. The bird at his feet explodes at the same time shadow clones fill the clearing. Everything upheaves, the ground shakes and explodes outwards and Sasuke wonders if this is like how it was when Sakura fought Gaara. She clings to him and he slams a kunai into the tree trunk to hold them there despite the heat, despite the fire, despite the how he aches and he hurts and the smoke from all the shadow clones shielding them and then popping makes everything worse. But it clears, as it has so far, even if Sasuke's vision is starting to blur and he deactivates the Sharingan, shaking his head to try to clear the ringing in his ears again. The left one works, once more, the right one is still dead. Naruto breathes heavily, sitting on the ground with slightly singed clothes but otherwise not worse for the wear. Deidara stands in a crater, his cloak billowing around him and he laughs. It's deranged, and it's chilling. You kids want to get serious, yeah? He asks, and he grins, wild and crazy and fierce. Naruto forces himself to his feet, clambering to stand by them. Wait. Karin yells, and she's there, too. Yamato-sensei still fights Itachi with wood that Sasuke doesn't understand. Kurane-sensei and Shizune keep Kisame at bay, keep him in a rousing dance of darts and illusions. And Team 7 stands before Deidara, ready to go. Yeah, says Naruto. We do. Chapter 52, Search for Tsunade, Karin Interlude. Naruto, clones, Sasuke says, and Karin watches as dozens of copies of her cousin bloom into existence around them and rush their enemy. The missing Nin only laughs, exhilarated, and a shudder of fear rolls up her spine before she jerks, twisting, at Sasuke tapping her wrist. She looks at him, eyes wide, Sakura doing the same and his hands flash with symbols and motions that she doesn't know, that she cannot possibly understand. Each village has their own hand signs, their own ways of communicating so that the enemy will not know them. Of course, the enemy could know them, if Sasuke's older brother taught him them, but it was worth the risk. Sakura nods beside her, she understands Sasuke's hand signs. Karin does not. She knows nothing. Sasuke nods back at Sakura and slips into the crowd of Narutos and Sakura wraps a hand around Karin's wrist, leaning in close to breathe words into her ear. Be Naruto and then hide, she whispers, and her breath tickles Karin's ear which makes her want to almost inappropriately giggle for a second before she suppresses the urge and nods. She's not sure why Sasuke couldn't just whisper that himself, but he had moved before they did so maybe he has more of a plan for himself. Karin's not that much of a fake ninja that she can't do a simple henge, so she throws one up so she's her blonde cousin and then blends into the crowd. She can't see Sasuke or Sakura and they must have done the same. It's a mass of clones and Team 7 hiding and their missing Nin opponent blows them up with glee. Smoke fills the air as they're destroyed, but wherever Naruto is in the crowd, he's making more and more and more and Karin wonders how many he truly can make before he's exhausted. There's also other battles going on, and that's distracting. She can feel Yamato-sensei's strange chakra which is like Konoha's chakra, like the chakra that is saturating her new village, and she wonders if maybe the wood is making is part of that because if she's right, didn't the first Hokage make all those trees and stuff? Is Yamato-sensei like his great-great-grandson? And then there's the chakra of Sasuke's brother, which is surprisingly not terrifying. She doesn't understand why it's not. It's unsettling, that lack of terror. There's Kurane-sensei, her chakra like mist on the breeze, like the genjutsu she had taught her and Sakura on the way over, because of course she had caught the two of them when they went after Sasuke's brother. Of course she had stopped them, and Karen feels awful because she shouldn't have, but the moment she and Sakura had heard Uchiha attack, it was after Naruto, they had bolted. The other woman, who had said her name was Shizune, when Karen had healed her, is flickering in chakra, weak and running low, but she fights strong and she's a healer, Karen can tell. The Shark Man's sword is void of chakra and it makes Karen absolutely nauseous. She tries not to focus on that, and tries not to focus on the chakra-filled fight happening out of her vision, where she can sense Jiraiya and two others, and just focus on going forward, towards the missing nin. Of course, Karen has no idea what she'll do when she actually gets there. She has Kunao in her hands and she only just worked up the courage to ask for helping training, and she hasn't actually started yet, and one of the chakras from the other fight starts surging towards them. Karen stumbles sideways as an explosion catches her off guard, and that's enough to catch the missing nin's attention. Oh, she looks up, locking eyes with the terrifying teenager as he grins, and Karen realizes with a sinking feeling in her chest that then was when she should have disappeared, used that jutsu Kurane-sensei had showed them to pretend she had poofed, just like the clones. Found one of you, the blonde sings songs, and this is when Karen realizes that okay, she can do something. She can be a distraction. Shut up. Karen blusters, trying to pretend she's her so much stronger cousin and jabbing a finger in his direction. Took you long enough. Is that all you can do, blow things up? His smirk immediately swaps to a scowl. This is art, yeah. It's more than just fighting. Karen stares. Blowing stuff up is art. Of course it is. He looks ready to go on a full-blown rant about it, and Karen is honestly kind of interested in what on earth he's going to say, but before he can, Sasuke makes his move. Ninja wire comes out of absolutely nowhere, out of nothing, wrapping around the enemy and pinning his arms to his sides, and his eyes go wide as a Naruto that feels like Sakura shimmers into existence a few steps in front of him and holds a kunao to his throat. He refocuses on her, but that's his downfall, because more wire comes out of nowhere to wrap around his legs and he falls. Sasuke fades into view, breathing heavily, the ends of the wire curled in his fists, and the missing nin scowls. Fucking Sharingan, he swears, but he doesn't try to get out, not just yet, far too relaxed for someone in his situation, albeit pissed off, and Karen knows he must have something more up his sleeve. I hate you fucking Uchiha. You're just like your fucking brother. Guys, Karen tries to say, but Sasuke scowls right back, absolutely incensed. Shut up, he snaps. I'm nothing like him. Guys. The missing nin laughs. Nothing. Oh, that's rich, yeah. You and your brother are . And then someone smashes into the ground. Chunks go flying and Karen swallows a scream as she holds up her arms to shield her face, pivoting on one foot to face the attack as Naruto's poof around her until it's just the real Team 7, and when the smoke clears, Karen gapes. It's the mass of chakra she had felt earlier, the one headed this way that had caught her so off guard. A woman. A beautiful blonde woman, diamond on her forehead, one who had punched the ground so hard all of the flying stones had nicked Karen's arms and poofed Naruto's clones and forced Sasuke to let go of the wire, so the missing nin slips out of the wires, pushing himself to his feet, and instead of attacking, he, too, gapes. She has a puppet under her arm, and the teenager's eyes fixate on that. Sasori, he cries, and the woman's gaze turns to his. Did you? Is he ? Something in her gaze softens. No. Lady Tsunade. Shizune yells, and the woman that Karen now knows is Tsunade, wait, oh my god, like the future Hokage, snaps her eyes over to where the Shark Man is fighting Kurane-sensei and Shizune. Kurane-sensei neatly dodges a sword swipe her way, disappearing into a cloud of rose petals, and Shizune pants heavily, on one knee, but before anyone can do anything more, Sasuke's brother moves. The only reason Karen knows it was him is because it came from that direction, and Kage knows Yamato-sensei wouldn't send shuriken towards Shizune. They're shot off so quick that Karen doesn't even see the Uchiha move, and even though Shizune sees it coming and wobbles to the side, she's so low on chakra the shuriken still slices through the side of her neck, and there's so much blood. Tsunade freezes, trembling, eyes frozen wide, and Karen knows the signs of trauma when she sees it, but she doesn't take a second to stop, to think about that. The wheezing that Shizune is making as her hand slams over the wound is horrible, and Karen bolts. She doesn't know what her team is doing behind her, and she knows the Shark Man is right there, but Kurane-sensei has him occupied, and maybe Karen can't fight, not yet, and maybe she doesn't want to heal every again, but like hell is she letting someone die in front of her when all she has to do is let them bite. Karen only gets halfway there when Sasuke's brother appears in front of her. Maybe it's a clone. Maybe he somehow got Yamato-sensei occupied. Maybe in the 2 seconds she looked away her teacher died, because Karen can't breathe, can't even look past him to see, because he's just right there, right in front of her. The healer, he murmurs, and oh, shoot, the Sharingan can see through Genjutsu, right, can see that she's actually Karen and that she's not Naruto. He tips her chin up with a single finger and she meets a pair of Sharingan eyes. Lee, she asks quietly. He's a regular at Ichiraku. It seems like all the genin are, Team 10 and Team 8 and Team 7 and Lee's team, and so many other ninja, and Karen is slowly starting to learn all their names, to figure out who's who. He looks up at her and beams, the way he always does. She wonders if he's ever unhappy, ever discouraged. Yes. Would you, she had to wait until his teammates weren't there, because Hinata's cousin makes her very nervous and she doesn't know the girl very well, except that her older brother is a regular and that Genma is really nice and offered to teach her how to use the Senbon, and she might take him up on that. I want to learn Taijutsu. His smile gets even more blinding. Yosh. Do you want to train with me, Karen? The will of fire and power of youth is strong in you. You would be a worthy opponent. Her face feels warm and she wants to hide, wants to bury her face in her hand and pretend this conversation isn't happening, but she needs it to, she really does. Not an opponent, she says, and Lee's face turns to perfect confusion. I've never really learned Taijutsu, Karen says, and it all spills out in a rush. I can heal, and Kusa always just wanted me to heal, and I never really learned all the normal skills of a genin, just to dodge and to hide and to stay out of a fight so I could heal people when they needed me to end dash. She's crying and she hiccups and wipes her eyes, and Lee moves with a grace Karen wishes she had as he puts one hand on the counter and pushes himself over it to land in front of her. He puts two used but gentle hands on her shoulders and gives them an unsure squeeze. I'm not a teacher, Lee says, and he looks away, a frown tugging at his face. But I can ask Guy Sensei, and I can train with you too, and you'll be a great genin and you'll show Kusa. Every word amps him up and he's on fire, only his grip on her shoulders stopping his clear urge to flail in emphasis. They will wish you would have never left, because you will be the greatest genin and then chunin and then jounin, and you will not need to heal if you do not wish to dash. Karen hugs him. He stills for a moment and then wraps his arms around her too, and even though she still doesn't really know him yet, doesn't really feel like she knows anyone here, not even her cousin, because is a month enough time to truly know someone? She knows a lot, but she still doesn't know him. Karen cries into his chest. When he finally leaves, after he promises to talk to his teacher and then talk to her later this week, Ayam pulls her aside with a serious look on her face. Karen, she says, concern written all over her. I thought you didn't want to be a ninja. Karen hesitates, glances to the side and curls her hands into fists. If I could, I wouldn't. Ayam frowns. You don't have to dash. I do. That makes the older girl hush, and Karen tries to articulate her thoughts. People are going to come after me, or after my team. And I want to fight and save them. I don't just want to heal, I want to help and not be a burden and dash. She looks up and meets her gaze. I don't want to be useless. I want to protect them. Sasuke's brother tips her chin up with a single finger and Karen meets Sharingan eyes. They're different than Sasuke's, pinwheels, she realizes in her last moment of coherency, and then she's falling with her cousin's screams echoing in her ears. Chapter 53, Search for Tsunade, Tsunade Interlude. Naruto no, it's a girl under a genjutsu, the red hair becoming clear as it fades, crumples, and all Tsunade can see is Nawake. It's Nawake falling at the feet of the Uchiha, the one who murdered his whole family and clearly sees nothing wrong in murdering young children. It's not Dan's niece but Dan himself bleeding out in front of the missing nin from Kiri, and Tsunade cannot breathe, cannot move, cannot convince herself she is a living mobile being. Even as the Uzumaki boy tears by in front of her, screaming with rage and Kyuubi chakra, she doesn't move. He slams a raise non into empty air where Uchiha Itachi had been but moments before. A clone scoops up the red-headed girl, and Tsunade doesn't move. The blonde missing nin, the one who had been so concerned for the puppeteer that Jiraiya currently faces, he grins like this is the best day of his life and sends two small birds of clay towards the Uchiha boy and the other girl and they bolt for it. Tsunade doesn't move. Hoshigaki same, and that's a face she recognizes from the bingo books, goes for Shizune but finds himself thwarted, caught in a sudden mystifying growth of vines that quickly fade into nothing when he swings his sword at them, but when he turns Shizune is gone. The new woman, the Genjutsu master, has scooped her up and pulled her away but Hoshigaki doesn't bother to turn and try to find them. He grins, the grin of one who loves the fight, and turns to charge at Tsunade instead. Tsunade doesn't move. But someone else does. She hadn't paid much attention to the children's teacher, up until this point. Yamato was a nondescript man with a nondescript face, notable only for the fact that both the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and the last Uchiha were both on his team, a sign that he was a capable Jounin or that Konoha had somehow gotten even worse since Tsunade had left, and she could believe both. Yamato leaps in front of Tsunade, slams a hand to the ground and a wall of wood leaps up to protect them and stop Hoshigaki and he has wood release. A man stands in front of Tsunade with her grandfather's bloodline, protecting her from a missing nin from Kiri. A girl with the hair of an Uzumaki falls while her cousin roars with the chakra of Tsunade's grandmother and fights an Uchiha. The brother of that Uchiha flies through the hand signs of a fireball jutsu while diving for cover with his teammate, who palms two kunao and sends them rocketing on either side of the fireball. Shizune, her closest companion, the niece of the man that Tsunade loves still, bleeds out, and grows still and pale while in the arms of a Konoha Jounin who owes none of them anything and yet still tries to call a feeble, flickering green medical jutsu to her hand in a sorrowful attempt to heal. Her teacher is gone, fallen to a teammate of old, and her only remaining teammate battles for his life against puppets that he had insisted he could handle, that she left him to face to come here and do absolutely nothing. Tsunade breaks. She slams past Yamato, bursts through the wooden wall, neatly dodges underneath Hoshigaki's sword swing and punches him in the stomach. Without stopping, without pausing, she swings a kick at his legs and then keeps moving, hurtling past Naruto and Uchiha Itachi and headed straight for one person, Shizune. Tsunade drops to her knees right next to the woman, who is trying so very hard to heal even though she can't at all, and Shizune opens her eyes weakly. "Lady Tsunade," she whispers, and she pulls her hand away from her neck to cup Tsunade's cheek and the scent of copper, of blood, and yet another person dying in her arms, dying because she can't do anything. She wastes 2 seconds in a slight flare of chakra to wrap a jutsu around her mouth and nose so she can't smell a thing, and then she heals. The cut is deep on Shizune's neck. It's clear she's been doing her best to stabilize it, with what little chakra she has left. If Tsunade were a little more stable, her hands a little less shaky, the situation a little less dire, she could make it as so it had never happened, use up every drop of chakra she could so that there wouldn't even be a scar, but as it is she wraps her hand in healing light and holds it inches from slippery red skin. "Lady Tsunade," Shizune whispers again, her hand slipping just slightly to her jaw and painting red on her face. The blood. Shizune knows. Shizune knows every in and out of her, every minute and every moment. Shizune was never even there for the best. Shizune has seen her at her worst, again and again, and Tsunade cannot lose her. SSH, Tsunade tries to hush, but she's so frightened that it comes out more of a hiss between her teeth than anything else, and Shizune grabs her wrist with her other hand and she jerks. The wound is gone, all that's left is a small pink scar, one that may even fade with time, and the healing chakra on her hand sputters out. "That's enough," Shizune whispers, and she's so quiet Tsunade wonders for just a moment if her vocal cords were damaged, but no, she would have healed that, she was healing everything, it's okay. The Jounin is gone. Tsunade realizes this now, belatedly, and thinks she's probably back in the mix of the fight still echoing behind them, but she doesn't care. "Shizune," Tsunade whispers back, and then her face crumples into a mess of tears and she buries her face in her student's neck. She doesn't care about the blood streaking over her face, over her front, she cares about the heartbeat she can feel below Shizune's skin, the way her chest moves as she breathes, the slow wrapping of Shizun's arms around Tsunade, curling in the back of her top. Dan's niece, she's forced herself to think all this time, but really, aren't they more than that? Family. There's so many words that Tsunade wants to breathe out against Shizun's skin. I can't lose you, maybe. Or I love you. She's raised this girl since she was 7, brought her up into the wonderful young woman that she is right now, and Tsunade has never been a mother and never will be, but she wonders, fiercely, if the love she holds in her heart for Shizun is anything comparable. Even if it's not, it's comparable to what she holds in her heart for Noeki and Dan, and she'll damn herself before she lets Shizun suffer their fates. Stay here, she tells her, pulling away and letting Shizun's arms slip away from her, and Tsunade gives her cheek one last touch before she pushes herself to her feet, turning to face the battlefield. Tears still stream down her cheeks, blood paints them as well as staining her front, and Tsunade is fully aware she looks like a mess. That's okay. She doesn't need to look pretty to win. Tsunade yells, moving at lightning speed and slamming her fist down between Naruto and Uchiha. He launches himself backwards, towards where his teammate fights the other Jounin woman. She doesn't hesitate, she ignores the flying rock, ignores the way the ground shatters, and follows him to confront both Uchiha and Hoshigaki, weaving around the sword once more and tapping just the right spot to flood his system with chakra and completely mess up his nerve endings. Hoshigaki near about collapses on the spot. He tries to move his arm but ends up shaking his head and looks completely bewildered. What did you do? He asks, and Tsunade grins. Changed your nervous system, she tells him, because it's such a handy trick that takes most opponents quite some time to figure out. Good luck with that one. She stands in front of Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame, Yamato, and Naruto and the other woman at her back, and she thinks she can take both of them on easy. The young Uchiha boy and his teammate have grabbed the fallen genin, the Uzumaki girl, and cleared off the battlefield, and even as the blonde missing nin rises behind his teammates, Tsunade knows that they can win this battle very simply. Uchiha Itachi realizes this, too. Deidara, he says, grab Kisame's other side. We're leaving. The blonde, Deidara, someone to look up in the bingo book later, scowls fiercely. Hell no. I'm not taking orders from you, Uchiha. Hoshigaki laughs, rumbling and deep. Itachi, make a clone and we'll leave this kid on his own, he says, and Deidara pales behind them, seeing himself against all 6 of the remaining opponents and clearly seeing where he comes up short. Fine. Fuck, he yells, and he's there supporting Hoshigaki's other side and the 3 of them are gone. We should follow, thinks part of Tsunade, but being able to beat them in a fight here and trying to pursue them is a completely different story. They can't leave the children or Shizun behind unprotected, and Tsunade's knees wobble and give out, and the only reason she doesn't fall is that Yamato catches her. She looks at him, at this man she doesn't know who holds her grandfather's wood release, and huffs out a smile. Thanks, she says, and he lowers her gently to the ground. Tsunade has chakra. That's not in question, she has chakra and she can keep going and healing and fighting, but she is so emotionally drained she just wants to lay here and get up in about 48 hours. But. She inhales, exhales, and the steel light of the Hokage enters her eyes. Yamato dash, he snaps to attention, and she eyes him. I left Jiraiya fighting another missing nin. Back him up and bring him back here. He nods and is gone in a heartbeat. Tsunade refocuses on the Jounin next to her. You, Adesh, she falters. What's your name? The woman smiles, just slightly, but she looks tired and drawn, red eyes red-rimmed from old tears. Yui Kurane, she tells her. Yui. I know your father, she says, thinking of Shinku, and Yui's small smile disappears completely. Nu, she says, and Tsunade doesn't ask. Yui, go get the girl, she instructs instead, and Tsunade's not sure if it's her own natural charisma or if Yui is also one of those that know she's going to be the next Hokage, but she obeys without question, flickering away over to the other children. There's still one standing beside her, and she turns to Naruto. He's shaking, eyes locked on where the redhead girl lays among his other teammates, and Tsunade lays a hand gently on his arm. Naruto, she says, and he whips around to look at her. He's not just shaking, tears cloud his eyes, and he looks so much like her younger brother in this moment that Tsunade's heart aches. Karen dash, he says, and half sobs. Can she's my sea cousin, you need to dash. Of course, she replies, and Tsunade gently flicks his forehead. Should you really be doubting your Hokage like this? His eyes are so wide. Hokage. I said if you mastered the Rasengan I would, wouldn't I? Naruto sniffs and wipes at his eyes, choking down the rest of his tears even though he still shakes. Why yeah. She honestly doesn't want to. She doesn't. But just because she doesn't want to doesn't mean that she can run away, Tsunade realizes, because she was sucked in the moment she had made such a foolish bet. Between Yamato and Shizen, the Uzumaki red of the girl she now knows as Karen and the boy that trembles before her, the unwavering faith of the Uchiha and his teammate and the pink-haired girl who now approaches them, carrying Karen in her arms, and Yui who vanishes to scoop up Shizen and bring her back to join the remainder. There's no real turning back now, is there? Sasuke clings tight to one of Karen's hands, like a child and uncaring about that, as Tsunade waves a hand glowing green over Karen's forehead. For a split second, he's envious of her ease with healing and then Karen sits bolt upright and it's only Sakura's quick reflexes that stop her from getting nailed in the chin. Karen looks at them all, wide-eyed in Sakura's lap, from Naruto to Sasuke to Sakura who holds her, and then she wraps her arms around Sakura's neck and starts crying. She doesn't linger there too long, just enough for an embrace back, and then Sasuke has an armful of crying Karen and he panics slightly before just wrapping his arms around her in turn and squeezing. And then she's off to throw herself at Naruto and the two cousins squeeze each other like they never ever want to let go. Jiraiya and Yamato-sensei appear soundlessly, impressive, given how loud Jiraiya's sandals are, and the two Sannin share small smiles with far more undertones than Sasuke could ever begin to decipher. He doesn't really care about that, though. He's more focused on his teacher. Sasuke looks him critically, up and down. You're fine, he asks, because even though Yamato-sensei looks exhausted and strained, he doesn't seem to be hurt aside from a few easy heel cuts and marks, and that seems so unbelievable when he was facing Itachi. Itachi, who hadn't looked twice at him, Itachi who had greeted Yamato-sensei by an unfamiliar name and known him, who had gone after Karen and Naruto and retreated without even a single breath to Sasuke, a single word and he shouldn't be craving attention from Itachi. Itachi is a freak and a murderer and... I'm fine, Yamato-sensei replies tiredly, sitting down next to Sasuke, and Sasuke resists the urge to question every single piece of his interactions with Itachi, resists the urge to question the wood and he wants to so badly, but Itachi had ignored him so completely that Sasuke just glares at his feet, knees hauled up to his chest. There's a pause, a measured pause in the conversation between him and Yamato-sensei and Sakura shamelessly eavesdropping, and then his teacher speaks again. He was holding back, he says. Yamato-sensei was trying with all his might and Karen is sobbing into Naruto's shoulder who is sobbing right back. Only one of Sasuke's ears is working right now and he feels burned and blistered and had been needed to be saved by Sakura. Itachi hadn't even glanced in his direction or said a single word, said a single scrap of anything, and he was holding back. Sasuke buries his face in his knees and swallows a scream. Chapter 54, Search for Tsunade, wrapping up. She heals all of them, well, Sasuke and Sakura, because no one else really needs it. Shizen and Karen have already been attended to. Yamato-sensei and Naruto are both miraculously unharmed, and Kurane-sensei declines treatment. Jiraiya doesn't even get an offer of healing, not that the Sannin looks injured, and Sasuke isn't sure what that means. Tsunade runs a gentle hand over Sasuke's whole body, his skin tingles as burns fade, ears popping as hearing is restored. Sakura is next, and he wishes with fierce jealousy that he could do that. Patch up a teammate afterwards, or his eyes flicker over to Shizen. Or, save another from falling. There are unshed tears in Sakura's eyes as she wiggles her bandaged fingers, and she smiles at Tsunade. Thank you, she says, and it's only when she meets his eyes that Sasuke realizes he's staring. Sakura, he asks, because he has no one else to ask. Why are you here? Kurane-sensei is taking to Yamato-sensei and Jiraiya, and now also Tsunade as she rises to join them, and while Karen's stopped crying, she remains quiet, staring off into space with a blank look on her face. Sakura sniffs, knuckling away her tears, and gives a slight shrug. They attacked Konoha. The blue guy, and she shrugs again, everyone knows who she means. They put Asuma-sensei in a coma. When we heard they were after Naruto, we had to come. A roiling, churning case of emotions burns in his core. Jealousy, fear, anger, all three making him almost ill. Itachi has barely looked at Sasuke, and yet Naruto. He tries not to seethe. He doesn't quite manage that. Sakura regards him for a second before she stands up, brushing off her pants. There's a small tinge of relief that swiftly drowns in anger at her leaving so easy, but she doesn't. She moves, instead, plopping down next to him so they're pressed up against one another, shoulder to shoulder, and then takes his hand and twines their fingers together. They sit there for a moment and Sasuke just breathes. Trembles he hadn't even noticed cease and Sakura gives his hand a long squeeze. They're quiet, nothing but the sound of the adults talking in undertone and their breathing to be heard. She doesn't address Sasuke again, looking past to focus on Naruto, on his other side. Naruto, Sakura asks, but quietly, for he still holds Karen gently on his lap. Do you know why they're after you? There's a long moment of silence. Naruto doesn't take his eyes off his cousin's red hair, and when he does finally speak, his voice is rough, hoarse. The fourth Hokage sealed the Kyuubi in me when I was born, he says, and Sakura's eyes go wide. Think that's why? Sasuke doesn't react, and Sakura stares at him. Did you already know? He nods, and a wave of hurt flashes across her face before she swallows it down. Thank you for telling me, Naruto, she says, and the blonde's shoulders twitching slightly marks the only indication he's heard her. They're quiet for a few more moments, and then Yamato-sensei steps away from the others and towards them. He takes it all in, eyes flickering from genin to genin. Karen's hollow fear. Naruto's tired worry. Sakura's resigned pain, and Sasuke's angry bitterness. His gaze softens. Come on, kids, he says. Let's go. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Kurane-sensei all leave. They say it's to heal Asuma-sensei as soon as possible, but there's lines of tension written all through them that makes Sasuke doubt. Yamato-sensei and Shizune are both staying, with a slug summoned from Tsunade curled in Shizune's robe, just in case, so they're safe, but that doesn't really mean Sasuke can sleep, though. Shizune sleeps on the floor in between the two beds, Sakura and Karen are in one, Sasuke and Naruto in the other, and Yamato-sensei stands guard. Presumably on the rooftop, so when Sasuke slips out of bed, he goes for the windowsill. Yamato-sensei appears out of nowhere, alighting next to him, and for a moment, they both lean against it, staring out into the sleeping town. No sleep? Yamato-sensei's hands flash after a moment, brows lifted in question as he signs. They don't want to wake the others, if any of them have truly managed to fall asleep, and so Sasuke shakes his head. Hesitates for a moment, and then signs back, his brows lifting as well. Who not he frowns, weighing over what signs to use, and tries again. Who enemy in Konoha? Kakashi-sensei had said it before this mission, that not everyone could be trusted. Sasuke isn't stupid, and he bets that's why Tsunade and the others have rushed back so quickly. Something is going on, someone is working behind the scenes, and he wants to know who and why. I'm one of them, whispers the Kabuto attack a voice in his mind, and Sasuke tries not to shudder. Yamato-sensei shakes his head. No say, he signs, and Sasuke scowls. I say, you more danger. Tell me. He signs sharply, agitated. I need to know. Karen jerks awake with a cry and his hands stop. She sits up in bed, sharp breaths rattling her frame, and when she and Sasuke accidentally make eye contact she's slipping out of bed to come stand next to him. Yamato-sensei's moved back to the roof. Bastard. Nightmare. Sasuke whispers softly, because he doesn't think Karen knows Konohan sign yet. Besides, he's pretty sure now, Sakura and Naruto are just pretending to sleep. She nods, staring at her hands resting on the wooden sill. He can see the faint bite marks on them, and crawling up her arms, and he wonders if she knows who each one belongs to. If she remembers which bite is Kabuto. Karen hasn't said a single word since she awoke, and Sasuke doesn't want to make anything worse, but he needs to ask. What did Desh? His mouth feels dry, and he stops abruptly, swallowing and wishing he had water, before he continues. Itachi. What? What happened? She doesn't move. For a few moments, Sasuke thinks she's going to stick to her silence, that he'll hear absolutely nothing, and be forced to contend with the not knowing once more, even if Karen's not doing it on purpose the way that Yamato-sensei is. Your family, Karen whispers, hoarsely, and Sasuke flinches like he's been struck. He showed them dash. She can't quite finish her words, staring blankly out the window, but Sasuke doesn't need her to. He knows what she means. He wonders if Itachi just loves that moment, loves to share it as much as he can. Or if he knows that's the best way to traumatize someone. They make it to Konoha the next day. Kakashi-sensei hugs all of them from his bed. Near death has made him so touchy-feely and it's a lot, and scolds the girls for running off, though he's gentle, and all of them sleep together on his floor on a big blanket heap. Karen only wakes once from nightmares, and the rest of them manage to get a little bit of sleep. Kintsune'd heal you, is the first thing Sasuke asks the next morning, when he realizes he's an asshole and didn't ask the night before, and Kakashi-sensei just shrugs and ruffles his hair. She hasn't checked yet, he says, eyes crinkling into a smile. You'll be the first to know when she does. Sasuke guesses she can get a pass, since they're throwing everything together in such a rush to make her the Hokage. The ceremony is that morning. Sasuke ends up using Kakashi-sensei's shower to get clean so he can go, since he doesn't want to return to the clan compound just yet. He will eventually. He has to. But he just needs a day. 2. Maybe, if the situation were different, Sasuke could join all the people cheering, all the crowds absolutely ecstatic for their new leader. But everything feels so dim. Exhausting. There's a dull coat over everything and it seems like everything is moving so quickly and yet not moving at all. There's so many people and he is still running on so very little sleep and he feels so crowded and jostled and... Sakura turns, says something to Karen which makes the redhead perk up a touch, and though he can see both their mouths moving there's no sound, nothing over the dull roar in his ears that Sasuke can't tell the source of. The crowds? Inside? Yamato-sensei sets a hand on Naruto's shoulder and Sasuke sees this as if it's happening from far away. He takes a small step back, and then another, and he's just moments away from fleeing from the masses of people when someone taps him on the shoulder. He whips around, nearly jumping out of his skin, and it's Ino. She lifts an eyebrow at him and says something, but he can't hear it and he shakes his head. She frowns and says something and his hearing snaps back into place. All right. Sorry, he says, and his breath comes quickly like he's been running for miles. It's with unabashed concern that Ino looks him over. Could you repeat that? You just answered my question, she says, pressing her lips together. I asked if you were all right. If Ino can tell, aka someone who most likely doesn't know any of this recent things he's been dealing with like Kabuto and Itachi, he's really not hiding it too well and his shoulders tense. Too many people, he says, because it's not exactly a lie. They're annoying. He doesn't think she believes him, which is fine, because she shrugs. Want to get out of here, then? When Sasuke meets Yamato-sensei's eyes, his teacher nods, having clearly listened to the whole thing, so why would he say no? They trace the path to Ino's house, the sounds of the crowds growing fainter behind them, and Sasuke is glad he didn't have to explain his departure to his teammates. He's not sure how he would explain. That explaining he's going to be with a friend that's not them is hard. Sasuke doesn't like how that makes him feel. Even if that friendless nature is something he tried so hard to cultivate, for years. Wait here, Ino says, dropping off Sasuke in the kitchen before she heads upstairs, and Sasuke takes the moment to scrutinize the picture of her family, again. A boy that went missing, so many years ago. I am one of them, Kabuto whispers, and Sasuke wonders if the timing of that visit, of speaking of Fu and returning back to that, was truly a coincidence. He wonders how closely he is being watched, or if he's reading into something that's not there at all, and shivers crawl up his spine. Either way, watched or not, he has the faintest ideas of what might have happened to Fu and it makes him ill. Here, Ino says, appearing out of nowhere, and she drops papers in front of him. Paperwork. She regards him with a scowl, folding her arms across her chest. Learn how to write your own report next time, I'm not doing it for you again. He states down at them, the papers that have to be Kabuto's file, because he had almost forgotten in the mess of everything else, and he's so fiercely thankful because now he has other things to concentrate on. "Thank you," he says, and he's about ready to start dissecting them right now, but Ino shakes her head. "Dads'll be home soon, I think. You should probably double-check it later." She's speaking in code, which makes sense, they're shinobi, but that gives him a new concern. Where is he supposed to read these safely? But he can't impose on her any longer, and he nods, gathering them up and slipping them underneath his shirt, feeling them crinkle against his skin. But before he goes, he has to ask, "Ino, was Fu a shinobi?" She stops hurting him, stilling with her hand on the door. "Yeah. About to graduate. That's the perfect age, isn't it? To grab someone to experiment and yet unskilled enough that it isn't a huge loss, Ino," he says slowly. "I don't think your cousin is dead." Ino is unreadable, and then she shakes her head slowly. "No. He's definitely gone, Sasuke. Don't." She hesitates, very visibly hesitates, and then leans in, pressing her hands against Sasuke's chest and shielding the view from any possible spies. She taps out a rhythm on his chest. Being watched. Chapter 55, To Ask a Question, Files and Friends. Sasuke stills for a moment, unsure, before he lets his hands slip down, resting on Ino's waist so he can tap out his message with his thumbs, still keep it hidden, still keep it between them. Well, he supposes, unless whoever is watching is a Hyuga. Who? Not no, she taps on his chest, eyes skittering away from his. She chews on her lip, which is something Sakura does, and the quick, off-the-wall thought of who got that from who flickers through his mind. Saw me take papers. Everything about him sharpens, because wait, was she not going to tell him this? When he had been the reason she was finding those files. You tell anyone? Yes, she raps smartly against his collarbone. Tell sensei. He doesn't recognize the name sign she trails out, but he can make the easy assumption that it's Asuma sensei. Not know who he told. Stay quiet please. Part of him grates at that, at the notion of keeping quiet about something like this, and yet the other part. There are so many mysteries, here, that he feels like he's only beginning to scratch the surface of. So many things underneath the underneath. Uzushio, Kabuto, I am one of them, Naruto's hidden parents, the untrustworthy factions here in Konoha. Focusing on these strange inconsistencies makes him feel less like he's going to curl in on himself until he disappears. So, says a voice. Got something to tell me, Ino. Sasuke whirls away from Ino like he's been burned, and there's a brown-haired man standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame. His arms folded, he looks at the two of them with a raised eyebrow, and that's Ino's dad. He recognizes him from the pictures. That's one of Ino's dads. Ino's face is burned a brilliant red when Sasuke glances over and she stands there uselessly, and Sasuke stands there uselessly too because he can't remember the last time he talked with someone's parents. It's not what it looks like. Ino says, kind of hysterically, and Sasuke's brain stops all motion. Wait. What did it look like? Ino's dad's other eyebrow climbs to join the first, but he steps inside the kitchen. He's already ditched his sandals, and how long was he watching? Right, he says slowly. So you were just hugging the Sasuke Uchiha alone in the kitchen for absolutely no reason. The Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke can barely breathe and his face feels so warm he thinks he might need to sit down. We're friends now, he blurts because he can't think of anything else to say, and it isn't technically a lie, even though Ino looks at him like he's sprouted a second head. His words are a little more difficult to say because they are like, really true, and he hunches his shoulders a bit and looks down at the floor. I needed it. The tension in the room stills for one moment, poised like a kunao, and then dissipates. Sasuke chances a glance up and Ino's dad's face is softening towards him, looking at him with something that's too akin to pity, makes him feel like he'll be ill. Better not let Sakura find out, he simply says, calmly, and walks past both of them to flop in a chair at the table. He's exhausted, clearly, Sasuke can see now, the ache of a long mission present in every movement he makes. Probably why he wasn't with other people, celebrating the new Hokage. Sakura and I are friends again now. Ino insists, folding her arms. You've been gone too long. Her dad gives her a tired smile and Sasuke feels now like he's kind of intruding. I have to go, he tells Ino, as if she hadn't been trying to kick him out not too long ago, and he can't honestly tell if it's because of the fact that she's being watched or that she really wanted to avoid something awkward like this with her dad, or maybe both, that she was trying to get rid of him. From the way she relaxes, just a tiny bit, he thinks it's the last one. Okay, she says, and she gives him a tiny smile. I'll see you later, yeah. Ino hesitates, biting her lip again. And, a dash. Sasuke shrugs. I won't. Don't worry. With that, he turns to slip on his sandals and leave, and he hears her dad's amused voice rising up behind him. Don't worry about what? Keeping secrets, are we? Should I worry dash? He's cut off as Sasuke shuts the door behind him. Kakashi-sensei. That's Sasuke's next thought, that's who he should go to. He left his stuff in Kakashi-sensei's room anyway, because he didn't want to go back just yet, and Kakashi-sensei will be able to tell if anyone's watching, and if Kakashi-sensei asks him about what he's looking at then. Well, he doesn't really mind telling his teacher and letting him help handle things. He's been realizing, lately, how in over his head he is and it hurts. But when he runs up the side of the hospital, up to Kakashi-sensei's window, there's no one there. The blankets the team used that morning are gone, the bed is stripped of its sheets, his bag isn't there. Sasuke stares at it for a few moments, blank, completely unsure about what he should do, and then he heads back down the building and heads to the reception desk. Where is Hatake Kakashi? He asks, and the woman behind the desk frowns at him. Name, she asks, and Sasuke stares at her blankly again because wait, seriously? She folds her arms. Name. Uchiha Sasuke, he grinds out, and there's not even the slightest flicker of surprise, she knew it already. Screw this. She flips through her papers, checking something or other. Hatake Kakashi was released to go home, she says, and Sasuke feels numb. He just saw Kakashi-sensei a few hours ago, was he healed, now, did that mean he would be their regular teacher again, was he out of bed? Sasuke turns on his heel and bolts to Kakashi-sensei's apartment. The crowds are dispersing now, the ceremony over, but instead of trying to forge his way through, Sasuke still sticks to the rooftops, leaping from building to building until he drops down in front of Kakashi-sensei's door. He raps on it, and after a few moments wait, there's no answer. He frowns, and tries again, a little harder this time. Kakashi-sensei, he calls, even though his knocks alone should be loud enough, and the door to the neighbor's apartment opens. It's an older woman, and she squints at him. Are you one of young Kakashi's students? She asks, and if Sasuke has to work to not drop his jaw, well, he feels justified. Was Kakashi-sensei not kidding when he said he was late because he was helping little old ladies? Yes, he says, and the woman doesn't lose her suspicious look, but she does nod slightly at him. Well, she says. You're not going to find him here. He's staying at his boyfriend's, he kindly told me, so I'll ask you to not disturb my grandson's nap anymore. She slams the door shut and Sasuke actually gapes this time. Boyfriend? He asks no one. It takes him about 10 minutes to realize that unless Kakashi-sensei has a mysterious boyfriend they've never met who never even visited him in the hospital, it's gotta be Guy or Yamato-sensei. One of the two. Those are the only two men that Sasuke's ever seen Kakashi-sensei talk to aside from Asuma-sensei, who is definitely taken. The only problem is that Sasuke has absolutely no idea where either of those men live. He takes to the streets, shoving his hands in his pockets, and he feels alone. Well and truly alone right now, because he has no idea where anyone is. Kakashi-sensei is at either Guy or Yamato-sensei's place, and Sasuke doesn't know where that is. When he left them, the rest of his team was with Yamato-sensei, and since the crowds are dispersing, he doesn't really know where they could have gone to because he really doubts they would have gone to Naruto's apartment, and does he actually know the way to Sakura's house, and Ino is with her dad, and those are all the people Sasuke has. He realizes he's stopped walking, people parting around him like water, and he quickly steps to the side to just breathe. He doesn't want everything to fade again, to have a panic attack in the middle of the street, and Sasuke tries to calm his breathing. He was fine when he was in Ino's house. When he was focused on that, he was fine running to the hospital, and to Kakashi-sensei's apartment, even though he probably panicked when no panicking was necessary and... "Sasuke," says a concerned, familiar voice, and Sasuke looks up to see Kiba. It's all of Team 8, actually, Kiba standing there with his brow furrowed and Akamaru on his head, Hinata on one side, worry on her face, and Shino on the other as unreadable as ever. "Sasuke?" Kiba asks again. "Are you okay?" Sasuke hasn't been okay since he was 8 years old, and maybe that shows on his face, because Team 8 exchange unreadable glances. "I don't know where my team is," he manages to get out after a moment, because that's the point that matters right now. Kiba nods, as if that answers everything he needed, but Shino is, surprisingly, the one to speak up. "We can help you find them." "How?" "Because we are a tracking team." Yeah. Kiba agrees, shooting his teammate a grin. "We'll help you find them." Sasuke stares at them for a moment, not sure what expression he's wearing, before Hinata takes a small step forward and offers her hand. "See, come on," she says softly, and Sasuke takes it. Akamaru leads the way, occasionally barking at Kiba, which Kiba somehow understands. Shino is a quiet shadow and Hinata holds onto his hand so tightly it almost hurts, but he's grateful for the grip, so it doesn't matter. They don't ask him any questions, don't do anything of the sort. He's fairly certain that at least Kiba can hear the slight rustle of papers underneath his shirt, but he doesn't bring it up. Instead they talk quietly among themselves, interspersed with the occasional bark from Akamaru, and they bicker about the semantics of Linner versus Dunch. It's comforting and soothing and he feels better, like how he did with Ino. Didn't he think, not that long ago, that he truly did have the other genin? That it wasn't just him and his team? It means there's more to lose, more that can hurt him, more that takes and takes and takes, but that might be okay. They reach an apartment on the ground floor of a building, and Kiba gestures to it, large and sweeping. "Here you go," he says, grinning. "This is where the trail ends." Sasuke opens his mouth to say something, anything, but he's feeling kind of overwhelmed right now, so he just gives a jerky nod and squeezes Hinata's hand tight before he lets go, and he thinks they all get the message. He pushes open the door, doesn't even bother to knock, this time, because he doesn't think the anticipation is something he can handle, and his entire team looks up at him. Kakashi-sensei sits on the couch, in clothes, again, not in a hospital bed anymore, but can he really be healed that fast? Is he really entirely okay? Guy sits by his side, and they're holding hands, and Sasuke is positive that confirms that he is the boyfriend in question. Yamato-sensei sits on Kakashi-sensei's other side, leaning against the back of the couch and almost falling asleep. His 3 teammates sit on the floor. Naruto is in the middle, Sakura on his right, Karen on his left, and there's a large photo album open on Naruto's lap. "Sasuke," he says, and there are tears in his eyes, face scrunched up into a blinding smile. Kakashi-sensei has a photo album of his team. "It's got my parents in it." "Oh," Sasuke says, because he doesn't know how else to respond, and he glances back, but Team 8 is gone. He pulls the door shut behind him, and sits down across from the blonde. The papers, he needs to look at them, he does, crinkle against his front, under his shirt, and the look Kakashi-sensei sends him isn't one Sasuke can decipher. Does he know? Did Asuma-sensei tell him? And there are so many questions he wants to ask and have answered, and "Show me," Sasuke rasps instead, and leans forward to look. Check the description for the links to the author.